In other channel news, I sold a whole lot of my motorcycle fairings for my ZX6R shortly after I sold it, and that gave me $1,500 to spend on a new project. And what I decided to do was buy a whole bunch of portable camping solar panels and deep cycle batteries and see what I could do for a standalone solar array in my backyard. I initially thought that I could run my garage lights off it or various other appliances in the event that we have a power outage, and to be perfectly honest, in 2022 it's looking like we probably are going to have power outages, so I thought now would be a good time to get on that and figure out an alternative option. As we can see outside, I'm running 6 panels with a total of about 750 watts. Now, since these panels run at about 70% efficiency, that's probably only about 500 watts worth of charging power into the batteries, but so far it seems to be working alright. The most expensive part of doing a setup like this is these batteries here. I think I spent about $1,100 on the batteries alone, and they do take up a bit of space and they are quite heavy. But since these are conventional lead acid batteries, they will last quite a long time and they're very stable, so they're pretty safe to use. And all I had to do after that was rig up some cable connections that were beefy enough to hold probably about 150 amps. That's why I've kept everything as compact as possible, and I'm running it through a 200 amp relay which is connected to a voltage regulator, and this will shut the whole system down if it drops down to 12.2 volts. That way it preserves these batteries from being excessively discharged, and so far it hasn't actually managed to switch anything off yet. So that runs through the 200 amp relay, which effectively kills the power to the circuit and to the inverter if the batteries get too low. And it's running through a 150 amp fuse and a 200 amp isolation switch. So anytime I can kill this whole thing off with the isolation switch, or the fuse will blow before anything catches fire. The inverter is just a King's 1500 watt inverter, which you'll find will run most things in your house. I haven't tested it by trying to boil a jug with it or anything yet. High demand appliances like kettles and things like that might struggle with a 1500 watt inverter, but low demand things like fridges and washing machines so far seem to be fine. It's probably worth noting that I'm storing all this inside my decommissioned barbecue, because this barbecue has had it, and follow the extension cord all the way down there into the laundry. We can see that the washing machine is indeed being powered by my batteries and inverter. I'm testing the viability of this standalone system to run various appliances, and so far it runs my fridge freezer on the front deck and also runs my washing machine at this stage. So that's looking pretty promising. So in summary, I have managed to successfully run my washing machine through a cycle using only my deep cycle batteries and inverter. So I'm going to count that as a win. And so the specs for all this is 750 watts worth of panels, 480 amp hours worth of deep cycle batteries, 1500 watt inverter, and a whole bunch of battery cables left over from a whole bunch of BMWs that I wrecked over a decade ago. Because obviously you need your DC cabling to be very beefy and as short as possible, because if they're longer you'll get more voltage drop and energy wastage. Once it gets to the inverter, doesn't really matter how long the extension cords are, because 240 volts doesn't really give you much voltage drop over a great deal of distance by comparison to 12 volts DC running at a very much higher amperage rate. So that's where we're at with that, and that wraps it up. Success!